watching at this hour. Border crisis. The so-called Freedom Convoy protests have turned into an international crisis. Officials on both sides of the border scrambling now to put a safe end to the protests. Allies meet. Biden on the phone this hour with key allies as his Secretary of State warns a Russian invasion of Ukraine could begin at any time. The tragic accident, the new report on Bob Saget's death, and the final conclusion from the sheriff investigating. We begin this hour for one with the protests in Canada having a serious and real impact here in the United States. 3 major border crossings between the U.S. and Canada remain shut down as the demonstrations over COVID restrictions stretch into a 3rd weekend. And patience now with the protesters seems to be wearing thin. Ottawa police have arrested more than 24 people and issued over 1,500 tickets. In Windsor, Canada, just across the border from Detroit, officials are trying to get a court order allowing them to clear out the demonstrators and their vehicles. Windsor's mayor told us yesterday that police may need to physically remove protesters. All of this is having real impacts on the U.S. auto industry and on trade. CNN's Miguel Marquez starts us off live in Windsor, Canada, right near that Ambassador Bridge. Miguel, the Premier of Ontario just made a big move and a big statement. What did he announce?
Yeah, this is the provincial governor, essentially, the state governor of the Ontario province, saying that there's now a state of emergency. He's going to convene his cabinet, and he's going to, which will allow him to put in orders that this illegal, he will say this is an illegal gathering and that is punishable, and it will give them the authority, essentially, to use resources that they've already brought into Ottawa to move this out if protesters won't leave. This big group of people you're seeing here, there is an empty space now. That was completely filled with cars. Protesters a short time ago opened that lane. It's about a block long before the bridge. And they opened that lane saying it's a sign of good faith. Other protesters didn't think that was the right move for them to make, and some tried to move cars back into it, and then they eventually relented because they don't want to be seen as negotiating with police. They have been talking with authorities here almost this entire time, trying to keep at least one lane open for emergency vehicles. So that is somewhat significant here on the ground, but it's not going to be enough. The mayor here in Windsor saying that at noon they're going to seek the legal justification, essentially, to move this out as well. They have lots of resources here. The federal government also putting resources in other places where they have protests. So seemingly, once they start to move, they're going to try to sort of roll up these protests all at the same time. Okay?
Yeah, and that provincial governor, I'm hearing, is threatening fines of $100,000, even a year in prison, if people don't start moving out now that he's declared the state of emergency. Miguel, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Much more to come.
From Dr. Moore, I think we all heard